So we are talking tonight, and so we'll go over a few webinar etiquette things that many of you have heard. And then we will talk about the Ag at Home t-shirts, and then we will move directly to Dr. Joselyn Beard, our very welcome guest speaker here, as she's going to present from sheep to sweater. And she's at the University of Nebraska West Central Research and Extension Center. And then we'll also hear from one of our Arizona colleagues on sheep opportunities in 4-H. So many of you have seen this stuff already, but our next thing, webinar etiquette. As you know, this is a webinar rather than a meeting. So everybody except for the panelists are muted and do not have the pictures or cameras. Your opportunities to communicate are through either chat to panelists or panelists and attendees, or for asking questions related to the topic being presented. That would be question and answer box. And if you're not familiar, if you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you should have a menu come up, and then you can get into the chat, which most of you guys know by now anyway. But if you don't, you can also ask. And so if you have questions, clearly type questions into the Q&A box. We will address them at the appropriate time. That may be at the end, or if there's something that we see, we might ask in the middle. But if you put it in there, just put it in there once. Repeated questions do not get asked faster, okay? And then if you're getting asked something for feedback or whatever, put that stuff in the chat. All right. Please, of course, be polite and respectful in the chat. This will be recorded. Ashley, don't forget to start recording. In fact, you can start recording now if you haven't. We are recording. Okay, great. And then if there's any inappropriate or harassment or whatever behavior, participant will be removed without question, but we haven't had to do that yet. Now the fun part. Of course, you guys, many of you know by now that if you attend 5 or more of these Arizona 4-H Ag at Home webinars, you earn a free t-shirt. And we got a mock-up at the left here. You must attend the live sessions and past webinars. So if you've attended from earlier webinars, do count, because we started this about halfway through the series. And after the series, you'll get an overall survey just to get the information and get your information on size as well, because we will order the shirts after the webinar so that we can make sure we have the right sizes for the people that have earned them, and we'll get mailing address and things like that. And so the shirts will be at the end of the series. Now, Ashley, I think you wanted to pop on and share something?
Yeah, so we will do an evaluation at the end as a part of when you get your t-shirt, but as extension, one of the things that we do is some annual reporting at the end of the year. And so for those of you who attended our first 3 webinars that were in 2020, so that would have been the rabbit one, the first horse one, and the swine one. In particular, if you attended one of those, if you could try to fill out our evaluation form for those 3, that would be super helpful for us so that we can turn in our end of year reporting here in the next couple of days. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat. And at any time this evening, if you could fill that out for us, if you haven't already, we would greatly appreciate it.
And if you recall, many of you have filled these out, but basically you have the same evaluation for each. You just choose which webinar you're evaluating. You choose the circle. All right, so let's see, without further ado, we're going to hear about From Sheep to Sweater from Dr. Joselyn Beard. And you can share yours. And
all righty. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. So thank you guys so much for having me come talk to you today. So as Betsy had stated, my name is Joselyn Beard. I'm actually from Las Cruces, New Mexico. And so my background growing up, I was an ag teacher's kid. And so we had all sorts of critters at our farm, one of which happened to be sheep. And so growing up, I did show sheep, and then we also raised some, and we did do a little bit of the wool side. So today I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about maybe some just basics, a little bit of info, background on sheep. And then we're going to go through the process of how we harvest wool, and then how it gets worked over and classified. And then at the end of all of this, we'll actually try our luck out at it, and we'll see if you guys can be wool classifiers too, okay? And so first things first, when we think about a sheep, we need to understand basically what that sheep's job is going to be, right? And so that's about picking the type of breed, right? And so why are there so many different breeds? And so can anybody tell me the definition of a breed? Does anybody know?
Okay, let's look and see if we can get some stuff in the chat.
Okay, I think we have
Genetics and body structure, wool,
okay.
meat, dual purpose.
Perfect. Right. So when we think breed, we think about the job of that animal, right? And so a breed is going to be a group of animals that are related somewhere. So if you think about a family tree, somewhere in that family tree, there's going to be some branches that crisscross, and they're going to share a relative. Okay, so it could be a cousin, a great grandfather, an aunt, two sisters removed, whatever it could be. Okay, somewhere in there, they share some type of family, and so that's what kind of makes up this breed. And you guys were exactly on the nose. These breeds are going to be good for certain jobs, right? And certain jobs for those environments. And so doing the three, and I did hear the dual purpose, but we like to break it down into having the meat, the dairy, and kind of that wool. And then of course you can have that dual purpose where you could have a meat animal that also produces a lot of wool, or a dairy animal that can also produce that meat quality product, right? But again, that genetics, so I know someone had brought that up, but that genetics component that really kind of defines what these jobs are in these animals. So I did have another slide of, thinking about, and some of you guys had already put this in the chat, of what breed or type of sheep do you have? And so I think the popular answer was you don't have sheep yet, which is okay. Hopefully you get some sheep in the future though. But I think the other popular one was probably some market lambs, which is pretty common. And then of course, those folks that have some of that wool or dairy type. And so it's kind of thinking of, if you think about the type of sheep that you have, or you think about the type of breed of sheep you have, it's for a certain job, right? So if you have a market wether or a market ewe, those are the sheep that you're going to want to show, but you're going to try to get a bunch of muscle on them, right? Where on a wool sheep, we're really going to be focused and concerned about growing that really nice wool and kind of keeping to that, okay? So as I had stated, we're going to kind of go into a little bit of some background in these sheep. And so sheep were first kind of domesticated about 10,000 years ago in Central Asia. Does anybody know what the word domesticated means? Can you give me a definition of what it means to domesticate something? Maybe? Oops. Anything in the chat? No? Anyone want to guess what domesticate means?
Not wild used for humans. Make it a pet, tame it, make it dependable.
Perfect. Yeah, great job, guys. Yeah, so basically, the process of domesticating something is to tame it. And the reason, humans did this so long ago was because we realized that we needed those sheep for that job or that purpose, right? And so making them less crazy or less wild really kind of helped the human population, because now we had access to meat. And as you can see on the screen, wool spinning happened a little bit after that domestication process. But now we have a way of, clothing ourselves, and kind of having that other commodity. And so kind of one of the older domesticated animals, but just kind of interesting on where that sheep started out. Now, that was around kind of Asia, right? So when we think about the US, the first kind of domesticated sheep was actually the Navajo trail sheep that came through that southwest kind of area in the 1500s. And so if you think about, I don't know, maybe some of y'all have some or have seen some, but a really kind of nice rugged sheep, but kind of that dual purpose, has that muscle, but also has the wool that they can use, right? For, clothing and weaving and stuff like that. However, some of your European sheep, and so what do I mean by that? Where you have these English sheep, weren't introduced until 1609 on kind of.
Okay, we seem to have lost your volume. I'm not sure what's going on. It doesn't look like you're muted. Oh, now you're frozen up. There we are.
Can you see me?
Yes.
I'm sorry about that, guys. Where were we?
We're talking about sheep being domesticated. You just froze up just a minute ago, right when you changed the slide.
Okay, so did you guys hear about the Navajo trail sheep coming through?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully I don't lose you guys again.
Technology, no worries.
Okay, perfect. And so, yes, so, that's kind of the earliest domestication. And then, we have these, as I said, kind of English sheep. And so when I say English sheep, does anybody have a guess at what that might be? If you know some of your breeds?
Okay, chatters. Is it sheep with the British accent? Yeah. Border Leicester.
Okay, yep. What else?
Domesticated sheep from England, blackface, Lincoln.
Perfect. Yeah, so like it's some of those typical, Dorset, Suffolk, Hampshire, stuff like that. Those are kind of the ones that were introduced on that eastern coast. So it's really interesting when you start to think about, okay, so if we domesticated sheep about, 10,000 years ago, but really in the US, we've only had them around for like 500 years. So that's kind of interesting just to think about some of the, advancements and just, how the human population really utilizes that sheep in their day-to-day life, and kind of helped us create what we know today in terms of what we can use those sheep for. So here's a learning check for y'all about how long ago, I said this maybe 10 seconds ago, have sheep been domesticated in the United States for? So you can put in the chat box either A, 8,000 years ago, B, about 500 years ago, C, 1,000 years ago, or D, about 200 years ago.
All right, we got 35 attendees, and so far B is winning. We got a D and an A.
Okay.
But B.
Majority is B.
Majority is B.
Perfect. Good job, guys. Yep. So, just as I said, the sheep have only really been domesticated in the United States for about 500 years now. So great job. Great answers. So a question I have for you guys now that we understand kind of where we started with these sheep, what we can use them for. Does anybody know, can you define what wool is? Like we talk about it, can anyone give me a definition as to what that actually is?
Say what wool is?
Yep, what wool is. Give me the definition of what wool is.
Animal fiber, it's their hair, a protein fiber, soft coat fiber, thick insulating fiber from an animal, nice warm socks. That's mine.
I love it. That's
fiber
great.
From the sheep. Hair on a sheep that is soft and clumpy.
Ooh, okay, I like that. Good additives.
Makes my clothes and many other things. It's fiber. Looks like we got loves wool socks. Yes.
Oh, perfect. Yep. So you guys are exactly right. So wool is just that curly or wavy hair that's on these animals, right? And I know this presentation is focused on sheep, but we do consider, alpaca, llama, and Angora goat, stuff like that. They do also have kind of that wool texture. But yeah, we use it for cloth and yarn. Now, I was going to ask, but someone already put that in the chat, of what do you think wool's made out of? And so someone said it's protein and also lipids or fats. And so it's really important to kind of understand that in terms of when you're taking care of these animals, especially if they are, for wool purpose. So if their wool is made out of proteins and fats, where do you think they're going to get a majority of that from in order to grow their wool?
Boy, she's keeping you on your toes, attendees. You better be paying good attention. Your main food.
That's right. Exactly. So it's really important that they have a good diet in order to, one, maintain their own body and keep themselves happy and healthy, but also to grow that coat. And it's kind of interesting because if they don't have a good diet, you can see it in their wool. And we'll talk about this in a little bit when we talk about classifying wool and looking for problem areas in some of those wool fibers. But yeah, so definitely. So if the wool is made out of protein and fat, we got to make sure that diet is going to have plenty of yummy things for them to eat, and make sure that there's enough of these nutrients, again, for them to grow that wool product. So we talk about some of these, what we can use for the product. But as it was kind of alluded to, some of you guys have put in the chat already, why do these animals have wool? Okay, and so we mentioned breeding and genetics. So yep, absolutely. So that's why, if you compare a Rambouillet or San Marino, they have this really nice kind of wool coat going on. But if you compare that to a Dorper, Dorpers have hair, right? They don't really have kind of that traditional wool coat. And so genetics and breed play a big role in that, but also just, survival. So that wool is going to insulate them. It's going to keep them kind of cool in the summer and then warm in the winter too. And then also for some production. So if you guys even think about the environment, just in southern Arizona, or, as you kind of travel up north, you get some of that desert brush and whatnot. And so this really helps kind of make sure that if they rub up against any cacti or anything like that, it's not going to actually, poke them in the skin and cause any issues. So if anybody has ever had the lovely privilege of helping shear sheep that, come off of a range pasture that has, whether it's cholla or prickly pear or whatever it might be, that you can easily see all of it sticking out of their wool. It's not touching them or hurting their skin at all, but it does get stuck in those fibers. And so you have to walk through and pull them off with pliers. But anyway, so, the big thing for those animals is that it's going to kind of be that survival of just insulation and protection. So what do we use wool for, right? So we kind of, again, alluded it in the chat. So wool socks were brought up. What else can we use wool for?
Insulation, clothes, rugs, scarves, mulching,
Perfect.
cleaning oil spills.
Ooh, nice. Very good. Yes.
Lanolin. You got warmth. You got all kinds of great answers there.
I love it. Thanks, guys. Wow, you guys are really sharp. You hit it all on the head. Once again, good job. So, we create a lot of clothing from the wool. Somebody said insulation, great job. Yep, we can use, in the past has been used as insulation for, not only our own bodies to keep us warm, but also for houses. Somebody talked about the cleaning up oil. Absolutely, it can do that. We also see that, in some of those fire blankets that you might see on the wall, they are used to help smother out flames, help for kind of some protective equipment, also with soldiers. So there's a lot of versatility with wool. Someone also mentioned that you can use it kind of as mulch, and yeah, you can definitely, take some wool fibers and kind of create a felt out of it and put it in your garden and can kind of help keep the weeds out. So very, very versatile kind of commodity. And so and something that you don't really think about every day in terms of, just how often we use it and how much we rely on it. So now we're going to kind of get into, coming off the sheep and what that's going to entail. And so, we take a fleece, right, that is going to be shorn off this thing. And it's done typically all in together. So that fleece is going to stay pretty tightly, kind of close. It's almost like it sticks together. And then that's going to be kind of rolled up, and then somebody is going to skirt it. And so typically there's a skirting table or a piece of plywood, whatever you might have. And basically what's going to happen is you're going to pull these pieces all around this fleece in order to help kind of keep it clean. Okay. And so what's going to happen is we're trying to maximize our yield, or that's the percentage of usable wool off of a fleece. And so what ends up happening is, you take off the areas that might be pretty dirty. If you think about how that animal, gets down on the ground to lay down, how they might get up, that wool that's kind of on their legs, maybe around their neck, especially if you're throwing hay to them. It's going to have some of that shorter, more matted hair. You're going to have a little bit of kind of short hair in that belly wool too. Again, just how that animal moves. So typically people will kind of take this out and they'll either ball it up and put it in the middle of the fleece and then roll it up and then put it in the sack. Or they'll keep it for themselves. And as I said earlier, you could do felts and stuff with it. And so they'll use it for like a side project or anything like that. But the big thing here is just trying to make sure that we have a fleece that, has a high yield to it. Okay. And so the question then comes through. So we, take that fleece and we put it in a sack and then we send it to a commercial wool place. Right. And I do want to say, like, for today's webinar, I am going to focus more on the commercial side. There is some hand spinning things that can occur. But for the purpose of this, we're just going to talk about commercial use. And so a question that comes up is, well, how do you know what wool to use for what job, right? And so part of this is up on the wool classifier. And so they need to be educated in a way of understanding, okay, so if I receive these fleeces from a farm that runs rambouillets, I know that that fleece is going to be really fine, okay? And so on the next slide, I'll show you kind of what that looks like, but these should be really soft. They have a really tight crimp or wave in that staple, but those are going to be more of a finer fleece. Where if you compare it to like a Lincoln sheep, that's going to be more of that coarser, long quarter kind of lock. And so it's going to have a thicker fiber, and it's also going to have a much bigger wave in it. Okay. And so basically, as the wool classifier, when you look at these fleeces, this is kind of what's going through your mind of, okay, first I need to figure out what breed or what grade this fleece belongs into, and then we can move forward. And so part of that is just defining what fine is. And so when we look at fineness, we're looking at fiber diameter. So if you have this really long, coarse, so again, kind of how I mentioned with that Lincoln sheep, it's going to be this thicker fiber, where again, with that rambouillet, you're going to have this much thinner, tight fiber. Okay. And so it's just like, think of y'all's hair. Okay. So some people might have really light hair where it's really thin, and some people might have really thick, coarse hair. Okay. So it's kind of a similar notion, right? So, everybody's hair is different. All the wool is kind of different too, when you compare all the breeds. And so as a wool classifier, we need to understand this. Now, going from all of that, in order to actually evaluate this, we take a staple. Okay. And so as you can kind of see on this, you can see these waves or this crimp in the staple. And so that's basically is kind of the first key of, okay, we'll take this lock or we'll take this staple, look at the wave, and we can kind of guesstimate what that fleece might be or where it's going to land in terms of if it's going to be a fine or if it's going to be a 3/8 or quarter, whatever it might be. Anyway, you would look at the staple, okay? And then we also take these other lengths and measurements with it, because with certain grades, again, that fineness or coarseness, they have to be certain lengths, okay?
So just a quick question that I think was asked. If that's just from the raw wool that's been taken off, and would the thickness of those waves be in any way dependent on who clipped it or how it was pulled off or anything like that?
Okay, great. Yep. So the waves, to answer the first question, the waves on that are just from that raw wool. Yep. So nothing happened basically when you put it in this. So you have a really big kind of gunny sack. You'll take that fleece out of that sack and just put it on the ground, and then it's just right off the sheep, and you can look at it. Now, based off of how it's shorn or who's doing it, that shouldn't really impact it at all. The only thing it's going to impact might be just how together that fleece gets to stay. So there might be pieces that you just have to roll together, but it shouldn't impact that wave at all. Great. So I had mentioned earlier that we wanted to make sure we feed them a really good diet, right? And the reason we want to do that is to prevent this from happening. Unfortunately, this does happen if the animal's under stress. Even just undergoing lambing can cause a break. And so that's what this is a break. So if you look at this middle lock, you can see that it's kind of faint right here, where you can start to see some daylight come through that wool. And I know that that's where it's going to break, and it's going to separate like this. And so what you do, is you have that lock and you just rub it through your fingers like this, and it will just break right there. And it's normally a clean break. It almost looks like somebody takes a pair of scissors to it. Now, this is really important when we think about yield. Okay, so that yield's going to be, again, that percentage of usable wool. If the staple has a break, I can almost guarantee you lost about 50% of your wool, depending on where that break is, okay? And I know that seems crazy, but when you think about the weight of the fleece, and so that's really important part of this process too, is, you really want a nice heavy fleece. But if you're losing half of your wool in this break, you're gonna have a problem. So that's not good at all. So we want our fleeces to be really strong, okay? We want them to be put together. Another thing or factor that comes into play is purity. Again, that's why I kind of mentioned that this is more of a commercial thing. We don't want any black fibers in that wool at all. And the reason being, well, actually, maybe you guys might have an idea. So why don't we want any black fiber? Why do we only want the white fiber?
Okay, we got some chat. What do we have for chat here? We've got can't be dyed, or it's even to dye, maybe hard to dye. Dead hair is, and you also have a question, is breaking wool why some people coat their Shetlands and Icelandics?
Yes, actually. Yes, so helping keep it clean as well helps with that. Of just keeping it clean, because again, we want a yield that's more wool than dirt and grease and just gross stuff.
And somebody also said messes you up when making clothes. The buyers don't want it.
Right. Yeah. Great. So yes. So the big one being is the dyeing thing. So, we really pride on the fact that if you have a white fiber, you can dye it any color you want, right? It can be a rainbow color. You guys, go into Hobby Lobby and stuff and seeing those different colored yarns, that really helps kind of market these if there's free from purity. And so, yeah, it's really important to make sure that these fleeces do stay pretty clean, and pretty pure and white. Not saying, again, if you talk about hand spinning, that can be a completely different thing, because that natural wool is very pretty in those different colors. But from a commercial standpoint, it's better if it's just white. So you guys, you don't have to know this slide at all, but I just wanted to show you. So when I talked about taking that staple, I said you have to measure it, right? Because there's different measurements for different grades or different fineness. And so if we just apply what we know, so we know that with the different grades, you have that fine or the half, the 3/8, all that fun stuff. And so because I talked about that tight crimp in that wave, so it's going to cause the standards of what we call staple for each of these grades or spin counts to be different. And it's just because of how much wool you can actually get out of that staple. And so we start to do some things in terms of, if it doesn't make staple, and 3 inches is normally our go-to. And for me, I actually had to measure this because once upon a time I was the wool judging coach, but anyway. And so we measured our fingers to understand what 3 inches was. But if it meant 3 inches, it's staple, especially for fine. If it's short of that, we go into French combing, which just means it can be used in a different market. So instead of being used for maybe a really soft sweater or, a really nice scarf, now it's going to be used for maybe socks or some other type of clothing that doesn't need to be so close to sensitive skin. And then if it goes less than that, I know we do call it clothing. And so that's where you can get more of that felt kind of coming through. And also just marketing for different things such as, making carpets instead, or even doing anything other of that nature, like saddle blankets and stuff like that. So again, as a wool classifier, that's just kind of one aspect of that you need to understand is, we have to keep in mind, okay, what is this grade? Does it make staple? And what's the strength of that? And so that's kind of the bigger portions of that. So once all of that's determined, all of the fleeces are going to get weighed. And this is pretty crucial because the heavier the fleece, the better off you are. Okay, let me say that one more time. The heavier the fleece, the better off you are. Now, the reason I say that is because we get paid by weight. And then from that weight, going through that classification of fineness, again, that's where you're going to have a little bit more premium, making sure purity is good, making sure it makes staple. Okay, so those are just kind of add-ons with that, but weight's going to win. So after all that goes through, then we go through this scouring process and then a carding combing process. So basically, all of those fleeces take a nice hot bath. And why would they need to take a bath? Does anyone know? Why would we need to wash those fleeces?
Okay. Josephine gave you a very scientific answer to get the gunk off.
I like it.
We also have bacteria, get bacteria out, get the lanolin out, remove dirt, debris, and lanolin, and wet the wool down.
Perfect. Yep, absolutely. So the big one in there is lanolin. So these are really, really hot baths that this wool has to take. And so lanolin, or that grease in that fleece, is also a byproduct of the kind of wool industry. And so we use lanolin in almost everyday products. So it can be in your conditioner, it can be in your shampoo, it can be in lotions, lip balms, makeups. And so it's pretty versatile. But that's the kind of the big reason. Yes, to get all the dirt, debris, all that stuff, clean it up. But the big reason that we use the hot water is to get that oil and that grease off of that lock. And then it goes through, as I said, this carding process. And so think about, when you have to brush out your hair, now we have to brush that fleece out. And so all that's going to do is just really kind of take these kind of sharp combs and really just kind of stretch all of those locks out. And that fleece is naturally going to just kind of pull together. And so from there, that's kind of where you start to see that breakup of dirt. And then again, as I kind of talked about this yield, so that's where we're now starting to see that big kind of expression of, okay, so this was the wool that we were actually able to get. This was our yield or our percent yield. Okay. And so just kind of getting to that. And so after that, so I talked about the breaks, right? And so during that carding and combing process, that's when you see those breaks. And so you'll start to see all those little pieces of wool just kind of fall through and they get caught on the bottom in a kind of a big bin. And so that's where you can kind of lose out on some of that yield again. And so this is kind of what it looks like once it's gone through all of the combing. Now it's starting to be gathered up and then kind of be spun down into yarn or thread or, that usable product that we can use. And so if you haven't had a chance to go to a commercial wool plant and get to kind of see some of the process, I definitely encourage you to, because it's kind of interesting just to see it from start to finish. But yeah, so that's kind of how that goes. And then I know these are more natural colors, but then, based off of the market, you can now sell it, dye it, do whatever you want with it, and kind of use that for the consumer. So my question for y'all, so we talked about some of the things of being a wool classifier. So I have two staples in front of you. Okay, so remember what I talked about. I just want you to talk about grade, nothing crazy. So this is A, this is B. I want you to identify which one is going to be the coarser grade. Okay. So which one's the coarser staple?
So far we got B's. We got a couple of A's. Got more B's than A's, but we have both.
Oh, okay. So remember I talked about how the wave will really help us identify this. So do you guys, oops, oh goodness, sorry. So in here you can see these little waves, right, compared to these big ones. So I know based off the wave and also based off the length that B is going to be coarser, okay? And the reason I know that is, one, just because of how open this crimp or wave is, okay? So that thicker fiber pushes that wave out more. And so that's why it's not as tight as this one. So on your finer fleeces, it's going to be super tight like this. Okay?
So my B sweater is going to be a lot itchier than my A sweater.
That's correct. So you definitely want to make a scarf out of A. You can make some socks, maybe some carpet out of B. Okay. But again, when it comes down to it, the biggest things that are going to help in that wool classification or just anytime you're looking at wool, you want a heavy fleece, right? To say that again, a heavy fleece, and you want a strong fleece. Okay. Now, based off the breed and the grade, that's up to you in terms of what type of sheep you're running. But at the end of the day, what you're going to get paid off of is going to be that weight and how much of that wool is there. So weight and strength are a big part of this, okay? So, just said this. What are two big things we need to keep in mind when we classify or judge the wool?
Boy, I think even as a horse person, I might remember that. We've got crimp and weight. Uh-oh, we have fleas. I don't know if that was supposed to be fleece or little biting insects. Got wave and length, staple and weight, thickness and purity.
Oh, wow. Okay. So again, the two big things that we're going to need to look at are weight and strength. Okay. So yes, all of that stuff does matter in terms of the crimp with the breed and whatnot. But the big thing is looking at that weight of that fleece and the strength. Okay. Because we want lots of wool. So what's the take home message from all of this? Well, first things first is that sheep give us wool, milk, and meat, right? Very dual, well, triple purpose, maybe some of them, depending on what you're doing, but, very versatile, very, kind of a catch-all for whatever you need. It pretty much has a job for it. Wool starts on the sheep. That's where we kind of get all of this from and the original product of it. different breeds do have different wool. So again, it kind of goes back to that grading of if you have a fine fleece, a half, a 3/8, a quarter, or coarse fleece. Okay, so different breeds are going to have different types of wool. The classifier helps sort the fleeces and finds any problems. So that classifier can be your best friend or your worst enemy based off of how good of a job and how thorough they might be. And so they really are going to be the ones that can help you, get those really high premiums, or if they find any of those big problems, again, like the weakness or those purity issues, you might have some maybe not as great of a check coming to you. Now we want heavy and strong wool, right? That's a big thing with these fleeces, and when especially for those of y'all raising sheep and whatnot, and for the wool purpose, you really want to make sure that when you're sharing them and stuff, that those fleeces, stay together, but that they're heavy. That means there's a lot of wool there, and that there's not any breaks. And then, so wool can be fine and thick, and it helps meet a ton of our needs. So it's, again, just kind of like how different people have different hair. All these have different kind of characteristics as well. And then based off of those characteristics, help meet those needs of ours. So with that, I will gladly answer any questions that you guys might have, or any other questions you might have for me.
Okay, so just so we always make sure that all our presenters have their time on the during the webinar, what we're going to do is actually sneak over to Josh Moore, our 4-H agent over in Pima County. And so we'll let him do a little bit of talking about the 4-H, and then we'll come back because we do have several questions for you. So if you don't mind, or I can stop. There you go. So now Josh will share some slides and give us a couple, and everybody else, while you're still listening and watching, you should have permissions. There you go. You can still put questions in the question and answer, and then we'll come right back to the questions. All right, Josh, please.
All right. Hi, everyone. Sorry if you hear my little partner here is about 18 months old, and she's currently getting potty trained. So if you hear some noises, that's what's going on in the house. Anyway, so good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Moore. I'm one of the 4-H agents in Pima County. There's 3 of us total, based out of Tucson. And tonight I'm going to talk to you a little bit about opportunities with the sheep project here in Arizona. In most counties, we're limited to market lambs, and in some counties we do have a breeding program, breeding ewe programs. In Pima County specifically, we just have market and breeding, and primarily focus on use for meat, for the meat and lamb itself. However, I'll talk a little bit about, and I know this presentation focused heavily on wool. I think it's a great opportunity to learn as much as you can about that. I married I got married to a woman who is Basque heritage, and the Basque were they were wool people and sheep, and her ancestors, and her grandparents, they actually moved to the U.S. To actually raise wool sheep, and they raised Rambouillet. And so kind of a neat piece of heritage, and all of my my mother-in-law and family members, we all have license plates that say "Eat more lamb" and "Wear more wool." So I'm a big proponent of the wool industry, and every chance I get, I try to introduce people to the finer parts of eating lamb. And actually, we raise in our personal lives, we raise St. Croix sheep, and so I'm really excited to learn more about this project. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and hop right in. This is specifically, I'll talk a little bit about what we do in Pima County, but I think this is probably similar across the state. Our market lamb program focuses mainly on, there's a few breeds that are quite common among market lambs, and usually it's either Hampshire or Suffolk, and a lot of times there's cross breeds, usually a Hampshire Suffolk cross. That's what you see with most market lambs here in Arizona. However, there's probably growing popularity with different other breeds. Down in Pima County, we've seen a lot of Dorpers. There's a kind of Dorper lambs, and those tend to be really great market animals. In addition to that, I've had a chance, I know, to visit some South Down operations in Central Texas, and there's kind of a growing trend where South Downs for market lambs, that you see more and more of those in shows, and in places where they have big enough shows where there's classes specifically for breeds. It's always fun to watch the South Down breed. And kind of a little personal story. My grandparents, they raised South Downs, and there's pictures of my dad and my grandparents showing little South Downs way back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Love looking at those pictures. It's crazy how things change over time. Anyways, though, a lot of times when we're raising market lambs here in Pima County, we have a minimum weight of 110 pounds. And although we don't have a maximum weight, we do have a weight where we try to keep kids within, and we stop paying for, and this is common in a lot of counties, where after a certain poundage, livestock sales will not compensate you for pounds over 150 pounds. And in the 4-H programs and the accompanied livestock auctions through these different committees, how most of the time in some counties, lambs are sold by the pound. And in other places I've heard that, like for example, I believe in Navajo County, one of my friends grew up there, and she had told me they still sell by the head. So it just depends on where you're at. As far as for the breeding ewe program, we do both junior ewes and senior ewes. Senior ewes are ewes that have been bred. And oftentimes with junior, we see them range. This year in our county, we had a really low turnout for numbers. So any members that were raising market lambs, we gave them the opportunity to go ahead and if there was a ewe market lamb, they could show as a breeding ewe, just to get that experience, to be back in the show ring one more time. All right, so usually though, when you're looking at the difference between market lambs and breeding ewes, we're looking at really different qualities, and I'm sure in other times you've talked about the different quality traits that you're looking for when you're judging livestock. There's more of a focus on marketability versus breeding. We're looking for different things. We're looking for a maternal look. We're looking for there's balance, and you're looking for capacity. All of these different things. And if we had more time, I'd go more in depth. But at this point, we'll just leave it there. Common breeds that we have here, Hampshire and Suffolk and crosses, both of those types of sheep tend to do really well in market classes. So with that being said, around the state, there's plenty of opportunities to participate in show beyond your county show. There's 2 jackpot circuits that kind of spread throughout Arizona, one of them being the Sela circuit, and then the other one being the Freedom and Liberty circuit. That's kind of a newer one, and they have shows popping up all throughout the state. They both have websites that I'm sure if you just Google Sela circuit or Freedom and Liberty circuit, you'll be able to find when those shows are. In addition to that, there's your county fair, and there's the alternative livestock shows. I know a lot of our county fairs these last year and a half have either been postponed or changed in some way. A lot of FFA chapters tend to have shows that their members put on. I know that there's quite a few in the valley, and if you're kind of tied in, you might reach out to your extension office to find out if we know of any, and I try to share that information when I get it. In addition to that, there are local shows that aren't part of a circuit, but there are opportunities. For example, a small town called Bouse had a goat show not too long ago, so those pop up here and there. And then, of course, there's the Arizona National Livestock Show that happens in December in Phoenix. They canceled it this year, but I'm hoping in the future there'll be that opportunity. They have a tremendous livestock show program there, and there's other national shows as well. Another opportunity that pops up, and it doesn't have to do with show, is there's the livestock judging component at Arizona National Livestock Show, and there's also a program called the Livestock Skillathon, where really you're learning different skills in regards to raising livestock. So there's some breed identification stuff, there's meat identification. I know that I saw Renee was on here. She's the 4-H agent in Gila County. We worked together with another agent in Apache County, and we were trying to bring wool judging as a component to it as well, feed identification, identifying the tools. So I'd reach out to your county agent to learn more about that, and I know that certain counties put on, Gila County puts on a great livestock skillathon contest. So there's opportunities for you to participate, and I know that there's volunteers across the state that do a wonderful job of getting those resources. Even if it's not a show opportunity, it's a great learning experience. So in addition to that, I wanted to deep dive into a little bit about these other learning experiences. We are running a virtual livestock show clinic in Pima County. It ends on March 7th, and it's focused mostly on lambs. And I'll go ahead and, whoops, I went too far. I'll put this link into the chat box, but there's a web page where you'll submit a 60 to 90 second video of your market lamb. and I have some instructions on how to shoot a virtual video or a video, as well as some grooming techniques. And by March 15th, we'll actually send you some feedback on ways you can improve. It's a free clinic to all 4-H and FFA members. It's more so we realize that we require kids to go to at least one jackpot show or a clinic outside of before they can come to our county fair. And since we're in 4-H has been in phase 0, we haven't been able to do any clinics for them, so we're doing a free virtual clinic, and there's our web page there, and the deadline's March 7th. In addition to that, there's a couple of other great organizations that are going to be doing clinics, and these probably do have an expense to them. The YGB, I don't remember what that stands for exactly, but there's a show camp for sheep and goats in Yuma. I believe the date for that is March 7th, but their website's there. Another one that happens in Oklahoma is the McPeak Show Camp. That's a really well-attended one. It's open nationwide, pretty famous camp. They have some great family. The McPeak family puts that on. And then another local one that I've heard nothing but great things about is the Arizona Livestock Camp that's put on in Holbrook, Arizona. The dates for that is July 5th through 8th, and they have a Facebook page. I'd recommend going to check that out. There's a clinic prior, and then there's a show. I think it's the Route 66 show. I'd highly recommend that if you're up to it, you go check that out. They've always done a great job with that, and I believe you can get your quality assurance done there. They usually have a person there who teaches the class, so I'd push that. And of course, if you're looking for a book or something for you to learn from, I'd highly recommend checking out the Ohio 4-H Sheep Resource Handbook. I know I have a copy of that in my office, and I buy those for my 4-H leaders down here in Pima County. And it really does a good job of having a lot of knowledge in one book. They're about $27, and the links here in this. And I'll put these. I'll find a way on the website to see if maybe we can post these links for resources. Of course, with that being said, that's kind of all that I have. And of course, if anybody has any questions, I'll check the chat box and the Q&A as well. But make sure that you put this in your record book, because this is a state activity. And thank you for listening to me.
All right. Well, you hang tight there, and we'll bring Joselyn back on. and he said he's talking about this webinar. So put that in your record book. So Joselyn, a long time ago, we got a question about, what do you know, or what if you don't know the breed of sheep? How can you then find out and determine what kind of wool it has?
Ooh, that's a good one. So a lot of it is just based off of characteristics. So we talked about, those sheep having certain characteristics that match with certain breeds. A big part of that too, depending on and if you want to do like a registered flock or anything like that, you can send it off for genetic testing. But a lot of it, we can just look at, what type of wool does it have on it, or if it's hair, maybe some coloring, maybe the face, maybe, its stature. Is it really tall? Looks like it stands on a lot of leg, or is it really short to the ground? Stuff like that.
Okay, that's great. So if I just hand you a handful of wool, you're not going to say, oh, well, it's clearly this breed.
No, not per se. I can probably get it to a handful of what it might be, but I can't tell you exactly what it's from.
Okay, so then we also have, how did the US and Australia compare in terms of yearly wool production? Can one also break down the sheep breeds of wool produced? If so, which breed produces the most market wool in the US versus Australia? You got that?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So Australia produces about 2/3 of the wool in the world. Okay.
They got us.
So it's a lot. Yeah. And so I think, I want to say it's like 300,000 tons of wool that they do, where we do like 13,000 tons. It's a lot. And so the most popular breed in terms of wool production is going to be your merino. And so that's pretty popular. A lot of people are, trying to do some crosses. I've seen, doing the San Marino Randolais cross and stuff like that, but they're going to have kind of that finer wool, but also have a good meat quality. So I would say that's probably the number one breed in terms of just what's going to produce the wool.
Okay, great. Another one down below, let's see, we had any recommendations for finding markets to sell fleece?
Oh. So I know with COVID and stuff, it's been really hard. I know a lot of the commercial places have ceased at this time and haven't really accepted anything. If anybody knows any different, please by all means jump on. Right now, I don't know the best market. It might be a direct sale kind of situation, direct to consumer, is where you might be able to benefit the most. But I mean, right now I know a close wool plant being in with Mike Corn and Roswell, but other than that, I don't have a great answer for you. I'm sorry.
Josh, do you know where Arizona?
Right.
Oh, he just went away. Uh-oh, he didn't want to answer it. Here it comes.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Market for wool in Arizona?
Yeah.
I don't know any off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
The only producer that I have in my area doing wool sheep, they card their own wool and spin it and sell it on Etsy. And they have those Navajo churro sheep also.
Mhm.
That's the only one that I know of, and they're doing that direct sale. She actually makes pretty good money doing it, I think. I don't know how time consuming it is for her though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think with COVID, I think your best option right now is direct to consumer. Sorry.
Okay. And then another question, what are the pros and cons for raising heritage sheep?
Ooh. So I actually don't have a great deal of experience with running heritage sheep, but talking to a few folks that kind of dabble, if you will, I know a lot of that is just keeping that wool clean, and really just kind of focusing on I'm trying to on not just sole wool production, but that's kind of what it is. It's like I know a lady that will blanket her sheep, even like her big rams, just to keep it clean and clean of debris. But I don't really have a great answer for you. I'm sorry, just because I don't have a lot of experience in that.
Okay.
From a market standpoint, so for example, we raise St. Croix sheep, and they're more of a heritage breed compared to a lot of the more commercial breeds, and like the Suffolk and the Hampshires, especially here in Arizona. A lot of these heritage breeds just do a lot better in our climate. So, for example, the St. Croix, they have a higher level of disease tolerance. They tend to kick out more lambs. They tolerate our heat a lot better. And it just really depends on the type of breed and where they originated and where they're from. Obviously, they're not the same size as some of these market lambs. They would probably, if you were to go to a market lamb show, your heritage sheep probably aren't going to do as well as those crossbreeds and all these people that are raising show sheep. But there is a market for them. There's a growing market for heritage and alternatively raised animals, especially from the meat side. It's really, you just got to find it. You can go to a farmer's market and if there's people that are constantly looking for that heritage, organically grown, naturally raised, it's a market opportunity for a person that wants to find it.
Okay, thank you very much. That's interesting. And sometimes what sells locally doesn't necessarily show locally and vice versa. So I don't know if maybe you mentioned something that I missed. A question, can you explain blood count? Did you talk about blood count or that?
Oh, so it's blood grade and then spin count. And so it's just, it's a correlation. So it basically means with a finer fleece, you have a higher spin count, which means that finer fleece potentially has more wool fiber, basically.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm sorry, were you finished? If not, then, okay. So another one, how time consuming is it to raise sheep? I hear they are too needy.
It depends. I think it just kind of depends on your environment. I've worked with some sheep producers that see their sheep maybe 3 times a year. And that's just for doing some vaccinations, dewormings, and then at shearing. And so sometimes people have a negative thought or kind of that negative process with it because there's been issues with like predation on them and trying to keep them safe and not going through fences and stuff like that. But they are really good to have, especially again, depending on the environment. They like to eat different foods. When you compare it like to a cow, so sheep are called browsers, and so they'll actually go and eat some stuff off bushes and stuff like that. And then also just like their parasite resilience is pretty good as well, so you don't have to worry too much about that. And also just the fact that they're twin bearing animals, and so they're able to produce a larger crop. So there are some benefits to it. I guess it kind of just depends on your circumstance and your environment and what you're wanting to commit to.
Okay, Josh, go for it.
I think from a 4-H standpoint as well, is the initial investment is not as high as if you were to get into other projects. I think that I know that kind of growing up, the natural process of when you did 4-H and you wanted to get into animals, you may have started with maybe small stock, and as you got older, you may have progressed and you had more and more financial capital to start off on. You could progress into a project like a steer or a horse or something like that. But I think that a lamb is a great middle of the road project to kind of start out on. Your expenses aren't going to be super high. I don't know if you remember from my slides, a younger child will not have problems training a lamb, and it's just a great hands-on opportunity. As far as like commercially raising them, I know that I absolutely love it. I love sheep. I think that I don't know, there's just kind of an earthiness to it that I enjoy. I enjoy getting dirty, and at the same time, I can raise more sheep on less land. Whereas if I were to go straight into cattle, I'd need a lot more land to be able to do it. So for a producer that kind of doesn't have as many options, it really works out. Sorry, the lights turned off on me in here. But
It's like, okay, you're shut down. So here's one. Okay, so I don't think anyone talked about a Venn diagram, did they? I think that
was just what the slide looked like. No, that was not a Venn diagram. Sorry.
There you go. Thank you. And so Madison, when you're talking about the A and the B and you had the finer versus the coarser, can you just kind of describe, I mean, I'm sure we all remember the pictures. You don't need to pull those up, but what was the difference? Why B as opposed to A?
So B shows those characteristics of a coarser fleece with having that really big wave in there. And then you can also tell almost kind of like the frizziness of it, almost like you can tell it's a thicker fiber as well. So that's kind of what the character that we look at in terms of coarseness and fineness, where the other one, it was that really, really tight crimp and really kind of put together and clean.
Okay, and so the B was more coarse, but more sturdy, but also less expensive.
Yes, from a commercial perspective in that plant, yeah.
Okay, and then of course there's another one here. What is the coolest wool color you have ever seen? Let's hear from all of our sheepy panelists.
So actually, it was a hand spinning class, and they were from Jacob sheep, and it was this Jacob sheep are really interesting sheep. So they have two horns that come up and like two horns that come down. Just for those of you that haven't seen one, but they have this beautiful soft wool, and it was brown, black, silver, a little bit of tan, all of those colors in one. Like it was amazing. But that was probably the coolest one I've seen. Of this natural wool.
Josh?
well, I don't have a whole lot of experience with wool sheep, but when I got married, I had an aunt, or my wife's aunt. She raises St. Croix, and but they had crossbred St. Croix with Rambouillet with my wife's her grandfather's bloodline. And so a lot of our sheep tend to have a little bit of wool. They kind of look like lions. They got manes, but it tends to be long, almost like hairy. And they do have hair as well, but it's really, really fine fleece. And so whenever I see that, I always think it's so unique. But it's like I said, it's probably not quality wool whatsoever. But that's about. And we get some lambs that they come out with kind of like a blue wool and a blue long, really, really fine wool. So that's as cool as I can get.
Yeah, and we have some comments that Karen has blue and violet Shetlands. I think ponies, but and favorite colors dark brown, blue sheeps, speckled blue natural, all kinds of stuff. So one other really good question. What is the initial investment to begin raising sheep for a beginner?
Ooh. It's a great question. I don't think I have an answer for it. I don't know what the initial cost would be right now.
Josh, you got some ideas? I bet you do.
Yeah. For a market lamb, it's one of those things. It's kind of, and if you're a horse person, you know that you can spend as much as you want for a horse,
Oh, yeah.
or you can spend as little as you want. But you're depending on the different types of quality and the purposes. But I think that for here, especially in Arizona, you can probably get a pretty good market lamb, probably for $350 to $450. I think that's a decent range, and it's going to be an animal that probably does well, does decent in market. So that's your initial investment for just the animal itself. As far as equipment, you need to make sure that you have a secure fenced-in area to house that animal. You're going to need probably some type of shelter to kind of take it out of the wind. And usually, sheep are herd animals, so it's one of those things where flock animals, it's good to have more than one. That's social, right? But at the same time, you could get away with probably just having one lamb. As far as equipment for raising market lambs, it's always a good idea to have a lamb stand. I've seen people make homemade wood ones, and I've seen people buy really expensive aluminum ones. As far as equipment, you're probably either going to need shears, electric shears. I know in some counties, the extension office may have those, or your 4-H leader might have some where you can borrow to learn off of. But a good set of shears costs anywhere from $250 on up. And then of course you probably want a good feeding ration. You need some of the roughage, so you'd need a bale of hay. And feed can go up and up and up. It really just depends on what you got. But I haven't looked at the feed prices, but I think you can expect probably for a decent market lamb feed that's a bag feed that's got about maybe $20 or less. You're going to probably need several of those. But I recommend to buy your feed as fresh as possible.
All right. Holy smokes. That's an investment, but probably still less than you pay for your horse stuff. Horses
Probably.
and horse stuff.
The good thing, and I had always seen this, is you can get away with putting a lamb in the back of a minivan. You don't need a full-on horse trailer. I've seen it done before. When we have our county fair, you'll see lambs come in minivans in the back of SUVs with the tarp laid down, and it's doable. It's not necessarily pleasant, but it's a great. It is a possibility. And I see the question about sheep and goats being housed
Yes,
together.
go ahead. Go for it.
Yeah, I know that it's quite often I've seen them housed together at different 4-H people's houses. Usually, they're in separate pens, because the biggest thing to remember is that when you're raising market livestock, it's about access to feed. And sometimes when you house them together, you might have one animal that pushes feed away from the other. So it's always good to feed them separately, so that way you can control, the amount and quality of feed.
Okay. Now, Ashley, I know that you have a couple of comments about the evaluations, the webinar, the next webinar, or do I need to look that next webinar up?
Yeah, so actually we do need to check. So the next webinar should be March 18th, I believe. Normally it would have been the week before. However, we have another event we have to do that week. So we're actually going to be March 18th. And we have a really special guest speaker coming for that one also. We have Dr. Frame from Utah State. He's going to talk to everybody about turkey production. And I hear he's really excellent about how to raise turkeys. So if you are interested in the turkey projects, this would be a really great one for you to come to. And I'm going to go get the link right now for the chat and put it I'm going to go get the link right now and put it in the chat for you so that you can go register for that if you're interested. And also, please fill out our evaluation form. I mentioned that at the beginning. It really does help us out. And we do have some reporting and stuff that we need to do for 2020. So if you attended any of those first 3 in particular, we would really appreciate it. I'm going to drop that link in the chat also.
All right. Do we have any last wonderful comments from our sheep experts extraordinaire, Dr. Joselyn Beard and Josh Moore? Do we have any words of wisdom to leave these wonderful people with? No?
I have a comment. I guess I think that if you're looking to get into market livestock, I would highly recommend. Sheep are a lot of fun. I know that that when my children are old enough, I'll definitely let them start out with some sheep. As far as training goes and getting them ready for shows, they're on a halter, so it's one of those things. They're not as difficult as a pig, but smaller kids are able to learn off of them. The investment isn't as large as some other projects, but at the same time, I love the taste of lamb, and then if I know that some counties, I saw that Karen said in Gila County they have a wool project. That's awesome. It's a product that I feel like it's a high quality fiber, and if more people wore wool, I think the world would be a little bit of a better place. But it's a great way to support the industry. It's a great way to learn, and it's a great intro project. So I'd highly recommend checking it out.
And Joselyn, we also got a what do judges look for in a breeding ewe popped in at the last minute.
So typically, there's this term we like to use, functionality. And so basically what that means is, breeding ewe is going to be an investment. So we want her to stay around for a while. So that means that she needs to be able to walk. She needs to have the right structure, but she also needs to look like she's able to carry her babies. And so she needs to also look like a ewe. And so basically we really kind of want her to have a real upfront, pretty neck, tie really clean to that shoulder. You want her to be pretty wide through her rib cage and really square down through her hooks in her pit. Well, that's the cattle, sorry, but through that loin edge. And then also just really drop a nice functional kind of set to her hock and pasture. And so basically she needs to be able to move, and she also needs to look capacious to able to carry those babies.
And somebody said strong ankles too, and I see Josh is unmuted. He's going to share it in as well. Go for it.
Oh, I think I love the functionality term. Yeah, I used that one a lot back in my judging days, and that's the best way to describe it. Mm-hmm. You're looking for something that can carry babies but still move around and have access to feed and water. So, balance, structure, and body size, body frame size, all that's so important.
And Josh, you want to take the last one? What's the difference between sheep and goats?
One goes ba and one goes meh. I feel like that's a whole nother lesson right there. We might get deep into the woods.
It is. And
Madison, I'll send you my email address and I'll send you some information.
Okay. And then also the last question here too. Do you have to sell your market lamb the first year you have it?
That's a great question. It depends on what your county program is. Obviously, you can raise a market animal without going through the process of selling it. We have that all the time. But I know that in most counties, the situation may be as if an animal wins grand champion or reserve champion, there may be a clause in the entry for the fair that those animals do have to sell. But I would check your county rule book to be sure of that. And it might be a good idea to reach out to your county extension agent with that question. But you can, in most cases, you can show without going through the sale.
And with that, that's an excellent place to end because it is 14 minutes past the end of our webinar, but you guys had such great questions and both of our presenters had great information. And so thank you so much for joining us, all of you, and our speakers as well. So I'll have our speakers will be hanging on for just a minute or two. So at this point, we will be ending the webinar and we'll see you on March 18th if you're joining us for the next. So have a great evening and please fill out your evaluations.